Martin, we should probably meet sometime and talk about permissions.
Probably a good idea.
So, mostly people seem to be like, cool, that sounds like a good plan. So, uh, when I took our document, Nick was like, we should make it so SSO can set permissions better.
Oh, I'm very down for that.
Yeah, so I added that to our list, but basically the only other feedback we got was like, don't don't let this die by committee with too many cooks. Like nobody seemed to have a problem with what we had. So, yeah, Robin, who's in Amsterdam now but is from New Zealand, was like, he didn't even tell me. He told Nick before I got to New Zealand, like, they should just do it. There's enough like
Cool.
historical data about what the problems are. And like really with Kyle's bug, mostly it was a couple of things that I identified on our document that were like, this just needs to happen as a prerequisite, basically.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, it's been a pet bug of mine for a long time, that one.
yeah, yeah, same. So, but it sounds like people are on board.
Cool.
So hopefully we can make some progress on that this cycle.
That's exciting.
So, also, I don't know if Ryan talked to you about it, but Ryan seemed very interested in there being a baby devs in Europe time zones also.
Oh, he's not spoken about it yet, but well, we'd been discussing it anyway, so I think he
Yeah.
loves the idea.
Yeah. I think also part of it is that right now his RAM is low enough on his computer that it's hard for him to run KTD. So he might be waiting to bring it up again until,
Yeah, we're trying to sort that, but the RAM apocalypse is hitting hard.
yeah. Yeah.
I'm just
I
seeing all
tried,
the nodding heads.
I tried real hard to sell, Andrew on frameworks.
Yeah, yeah,
And
that'd be good.
Jonathan seemed to think I might have made a good enough case for you guys. So,
I think we're game. We're just waiting for our current generation of laptops to all go out of date. So
yeah.
uh, I think mine goes out of date, well, as soon as it dies, because it's 3.5 years old now, and the other devs are kind of 6 months behind me.
Yeah. So, cool. Okay. It's 10:01. I'm gonna do something to make the recording easier. Cut it after this. Welcome to the December 11th, 2025 koha-US Baby Dev Special Interest Group meeting. I think that's the first time I've got through the whole thing without like having to stop and read something because I forgot the whole thing. Lots of words. So welcome. We've got a couple new faces this time. I'm Lisette. I'm a developer at Bywater Solutions. I used to be a partner at a library of Bywater Solutions. Before that, um, I wanted to talk a little bit about KohaCon because Jason and I presented about baby devs at KohaCon last month. It went well. There was lots of good feedback. There were a lot of people who were like, I think we're going to start one of these in Australia. And I think we're going to start one of these in European time zones so that, if David Nind wants to go, he doesn't have to come at what time is it, David? Like 4 a.m. or something there? 5? 7. Oh, it's not too bad right now. 7 o'clock in New Zealand right now. But you know, having more of this at different times across the world for people. So there's a wider variety. Um, there was a lot of good interest. We also talked a lot about developer documentation. As we discussed last time at our meeting last month, uh, the documentation is kind of spread out for developers and isn't necessarily the easiest to update, like, especially I think on the wiki. We talked about it at our dev meeting. Was that only yesterday? Our community dev meeting yesterday morning, which somehow feels much longer ago, even though nothing's happened. It's just been a busy couple of days, I guess. Um, and kind of David thankfully put the notes from that in on our notes, which I'll share in the thing in case anyone doesn't have it. Um, but really our big things were like, what are we looking for? What are like the outcomes? What's needed? What are our goals here before we even pick like, do we want to do it? We talked about that we'll probably do it code as documentation. So probably something that we can like host on Git, um, or have the code on Git. Um, but maybe have it look nice. And there was lots of discussion about like how, um, how we want to do that. But that really the first thing we want to talk about is like, what are we looking for with better documentation? But before we get into that, hello, welcome to the new folks. We should probably do some introductions other than just me, that I'm the leader of the special interest group. Um, let's go around and say where we are, and I don't know, what's your favorite season? I'm Lisette, I'm in Washington State, and I love autumn/fall. How about David?
Hi, I'm David, and I'm in New Zealand. And what is my? I don't like it too hot. I don't like it too cold. um, Autumn's probably my spring. Actually, spring's probably.
Okay, Andrew?
Hello, I'm Andrew. I'm in Iowa. I mean, it's between spring and, excuse me, spring and fall. Only the like transitional seasons are bearable. The extremes are too much. Well, I'll go to John, who's third in my Zoom.
Hi, I'm John. I'm at Austin Seminary in Texas. We theoretically have 3 seasons here. Um, I think it's mostly just summer all the time with, a brief pivot into winter and then back to summer. But I prefer autumn.
Brendan.
My name's Brendan Lawler. I work for CLAMS Library Network in southeastern Massachusetts, Cape Cod and the islands. And my favorite season is after tourist season, when the tourists all go away. And I will introduce Lawrence is our new technical support specialist at CLAMS. Some of you might have met him at the COA conference in Providence. Um, what's your favorite season?
Yeah, so hi, I'm Lawrence. I'm the new technical support specialist at CLAMS here in Massachusetts, Cape Cod. Um, and I'm definitely an autumn fall guy as well. I really enjoy leaf peeping and apple picking.
Lola.
Hello, I am Lola. I am in Iowa. Autumn is also my favorite season, but winter is a very close second. Hang on, let me see who's next to my Zoom. I think my order is very different. Lucas?
Hi, I'm Lucas. I'm a developer with Bywater. I live in Colorado. I live here mostly to ski, making winter my favorite season.
Jason.
Jason, at the Southeast Kansas Library System in Kansas. I'm just gonna go with not winter. It's my favorite season. I really missed that New Zealand weather when I got back to cold, dark Kansas. It
Yeah.
was so nice there.
It snowed and I was worried about my flight getting canceled actually, because it snowed enough the day that I was flying in to home after being in what was basically the equivalent for me of like 80-degree weather, because it was like about 70 Fahrenheit most of the time we were there, but it's so much higher humidity than where I am, because I'm in Eastern Washington, which is like desert humidity levels. And so the like increased humidity, it felt like it was in like the low 80s the whole time we were there. And then I came back to like 30 and enough snow that my flight didn't get delayed, but my parents the next day did get canceled and they had to wait for 2 later flights to get home.
I
So,
re I shouldn't complain because today our high is 60, so we're on that roller coaster of like hot and
yeah,
cold right now.
it's been warmer and rainy, but still not as like the whole time we were in New Zealand, there was only like one day really where it rained enough to be a problem for me, and that was after most everybody left. So, yeah. Okay. Martin.
So I'm Martin. I'm gate crashing from the UK whilst I cook dinner, so I might not be here for the whole time. I'm one of the OpenFifth developers, well, the team manager at OpenFifth. Oh, and I like summer because the UK every other time is cold and wet.
Okay, and Mike is the last person I see. And you can also introduce in chat or not if you aren't around or aren't comfortable with it. Um,
He did. It's in chat.
oh, it didn't give me a notification. Mike's looking for today's meeting. Great. Oh yeah, definitely not seeing the sun much right now is that was also a big change because we were like already going into that and then we went to New Zealand where it's spring and so it was like getting longer days and then came back and it was even shorter. So, um, okay. So, what we often do is we'll have someone share their screen and like drive through testing a bug or sign or making a patch like Jason did. Um, but does anybody have any like problems with their KTD setup or need any assistance with that? Or is everyone pretty good? Looks like everyone's pretty good. Okay. I know one thing to mention, it's not in KTD core yet, but two things are coming soon. Mana is going to be set up by default. It was in today's advent calendar post about Koha advent calendar post for easier sharing, and there's been some great improvements this year from the intern that's working on it at Biblib in France. Also coming soon, the Tomas's new work on he rewrote the Git-bz for Koha into Perl, so more people can contribute to it because it's in Perl instead of something fewer of the developers know how to do. Um, and there's some instructions for how to use it if you want to now, but it's feature complete, so he's working on getting it in as like a setting option. But it's pretty nice. A lot of it is just it looks nicer, and you don't get the weird timeout error every time you attach a patch, even if there's not a timeout. So one thing we talked about is add in release notes to that also, so that we can add release notes when we update patches. Now that it's feature complete, that's one of the next like new things that we want to do with it. Today's a little different because I wanted to talk about documentation, since that's been big on our minds in the past. So, really, what kind of documentation would be helpful? What are we looking for, like, as newer, especially on the like librarian to pipeline or library worker to pipeline developer pipeline? What are we looking for here? What do we think would be helpful? like how-to guides, how to do
So,
certain things.
so I guess the first step is getting the development environment set up in your environment. So that would be my view for a start. Because you can't really do much more. Well, you can use the sandboxes,
But not for dev, just for testing.
yeah.
So like KTD, making sure.
Maybe some sort of like foundational documentation. So
Yeah.
like understanding the ecosystem and how it fits together. Because I think that's something that was hard for me to wrap my head around, and it's still not all there. But like how Git plays into the development process and that sort of thing, and what Git is. A lot of librarians don't understand that at all. So maybe a glossary too. I don't know.
And we did kind of make a glossary. Is it at the bottom of this document, maybe? It might be linked. That was one of the things we did at like our very first meeting was like, or one of our first meetings was, hey, what do all these words mean? Oh, it might not be linked. It might be in the old before we started doing it in this.
I, I
We have
would,
the same with the documentation team because, like we use version control. So, and then if you're not coming from a developer background, then understanding version control is using Git particularly is pretty important. Yeah.
I, I would say, yeah, understanding what Git is doing, and especially as someone who doesn't want to inadvertently screw something up, um, knowing what some of these KTD commands do, because I can follow the written guide, but I don't know what the implications of something is. I'm going to be very hesitant to try doing it on my own, because I don't want to screw up a bug in Bugzilla or, otherwise cause problems for somebody else who I want to continue making nice software for me to use.
So how to fix your screw ups?
Well, hopefully how to not screw up in the first place, but given my track record, maybe that would be a good second place goal there.
Yeah, cool. No, that's really good. I think what the other thing I think foundation that Jason was talking about is the development workflow. So I think if you've been doing it for a while, you realize the process it goes through. But if you're brand new, you probably don't realize what the workflow is. And the current graph is pretty ugly in the development handbook. So,
Yeah, we could definitely have.
but
I might even.
we've had some good presentations from people over the years talking about the development workflow for new people, and
Yeah,
and Bugzilla, and that whole what seems weird when you first start, really, I guess, or it doesn't make any sense at all. I don't know. I don't know what people would think about that.
yeah. And so for the dev environment setup, like the KTD instructions are pretty helpful, but Windows instructions are kind of lacking.
Yeah, so Brendan's guide on setting that up is pretty good. I haven't, very good. So I haven't tried it yet because I don't
Yeah.
use Windows that often. But
Yeah, I'm on Linux now because I had so much trouble with Windows, and before Koha testing Docker, we had Koha DevBox, which used virtual machines and seemed to be pretty easy to set up on Linux and Mac, but I know David and I both spent a lot of time in the old IRC talking about it because like he was the only other one who sometimes used it. So when I had questions, I'd always be like, David, have you seen this? And a lot of times it would be like, no, because I'm not using it on Windows right now.
yeah, although I think using it in Linux, what is it? Linux Windows subsystem gives you
Yeah,
basically Linux anyway. So yeah,
this was like pre-Windows subsystem for
yeah,
Linux, which was
yeah.
part of the issues. I know
Yeah,
also
and then
there's
there's lots of people who use Mac as well. I don't know. Is there any Mac users in the house?
yes, Andrew, Lawrence, and I know Tomas uses it, so the KTD instructions are pretty good for Mac from what I understand. Actually, I helped Jessie set it up at KohaCon on her Mac, and there was like, I think the only thing was really that I copy and pasted a wrong command because I was copying the Linux command, not the Mac command, and then we had to talk to someone and got it sorted out. So I think the Mac instructions are pretty good. I do know that some people, and this was brought up at KohaCon, that some people are intimidated by all the instructions for it being on Git as like just a README on Git, as opposed to something like Brendan's like static web page type thing, being a little more.
Yeah, I think you sort of want something that's aimed at beginners. So that
Yeah.
this materials there assumes a certain level of knowledge. You know, you can use the command line and you're happy installing things. And yeah, so I think a step by step, like Brendan stuff, you know, that's that steps you through it as though you have, not that you have no knowledge, but that this is all new to you. Yeah. Or not familiar. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think if there could be some way to kind of connect the conceptual, what you're doing, the steps in the process with the commands that you're running. So this is what you're doing, because a lot of times, especially when we're doing something in this group, it's like, okay, when this happens, you run this command, and then like, there's really no time to explain, okay, now this command does this. And so you're just sort of, you know, you have people there that you trust, which makes it a little different. But if you ever want to start doing it on your own, you're going to need to know. Or this is kind of repeating what I said before, but
Yeah, but like a link between what you're
more
doing
context.
and why you're
Yeah.
doing it.
Yeah, we do a lot of what, but not a lot of why. That's what I was gonna say too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, a lot of the Git tutorials and other Docker and all that sort of stuff are all what's the phrase I'm looking for? Yeah. They assume a certain level of knowledge that you, when you're starting, you have no idea. Yeah. Which I think I said that before.
Yeah, and like that's that same kind of thing where some people are intimidated by even a README on Git because they're like, oh, Git, I don't know, that's like too advanced for me. That's like more than I'm comfortable with. And so trying to like get that earlier, you know, getting people from that to being more comfortable with like the Git READMEs and stuff.
Yeah, and a nice gentle introduction so you don't feel too overwhelmed. Yeah.
And like the Jason's reference sheet does some of that, but again, it's more of the what and not the why.
Yeah, whereas Brendan's put some of the why. Yeah. So yeah, we've got lots of the bits and pieces there. Yeah.
I think he's added to it since last time.
Yeah. Sorry, I interrupted.
That's okay. On that sort of topic, I really like the idea that Martin put in the chat, sort of like a code orientation, because I think part of the thing that's really overwhelming when you're first looking at Koha code is like there's like what is in C4 versus Koha and why is that the case? So a little bit of like maybe historical background information about why it's like that and then also like how does how do the tables in the database work like when you're using those Koha objects, so a little bit about like how do the tables become objects in the code and kind of relate the database structure to those functions could be like really helpful for like when that sort of first clicked for me, it was like a big breakthrough, I think. And but it was I don't know how it just happened over like a course of conversations with people and like looking at trying different things, but it wasn't really very like laid out like a place where you can read about that stuff.
Yeah, and I think Tomas's handbook has a little more of that, though I also feel like it's like the same problem that I have when I try writing template toolkit documentation, where I go really deep right away. Where like this is super helpful, but I also feel like it would be very overwhelming if you didn't already, as it's currently structured at least, if you didn't already have like a pretty good base familiarity. But I do think that that's kind of part of what he was going for here was like trying to make sure that that's all documented somewhere. Um, and like right now it's just markdown files in Git, but I think a lot of this could probably be um, incorporated or like built up too. But he's got like here's like architecture and design patterns and how Koha is designed. Um, but it doesn't have that historical data, like why.
Yeah, but this part about the architecture and design pattern, this is exactly like what
Yeah,
uh, it's really useful to like understand like conceptually how the Koha code works together with the database.
yeah.
One thing I was thinking about how to put this all together is, this, for those who don't know, in Koha, or when you've got Katie going, there's a how-to tutorial which works
Mhm.
through all the basic steps. But even if not that, it's just sort of I was just thinking of something. These are all the basic things that you should work through and learning, like a bit of a learning plan, for want of a better word. But just obviously Katie get the development environment set up, and you know some simple step-by-step things you need to do, so you can tick them off and say, I've sort of got some of these things. I'm but something like that anyway, so that you can just work through something, so you learn each of the bits you need to do. Yeah, for want of a better word, I'd call it a bit of a learning plan. It's the things you can knock off as you learn things, and some of them you might already know, and some of them will be new. So
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Just like things that you can safely do, like a step-by-step lesson on these are the steps, this is what you do, this is why, like you're taking a class on it more than just reading documentation about it. Um, Having something like that is really helpful for me, like being able to hands-on learn on my own, that sort of thing. Tutorials more than you know what I mean. What David was saying.
something you can work through at your own pace, that
But
works. Well,
yeah,
that the community said this works, and we've kept it up to date, so that you don't get lost in step 55, and
and you're not gonna like mess anything up. You're not gonna break anything.
mm,
But you're learning the steps of the process with
mm,
like real tactile thing, like a tactile result. Like
Yeah,
you've done it, you feel more confident because you've done the steps and you can repeat those steps.
yeah,
sort of a bit like we do here. We work through those things over and over again with different people, and so you know, so yeah. One thing, yeah, I guess on that code orientation, I still don't, because I'm not really a developer. There's template files, and then there's the code, and some of them are named the same, and I assume they're all supposed to be the same name. The page you access, then where do you find the page that generates that, which is the template? Maybe, I don't know. That sort of really basic stuff that I'm sure people know, and then And then as you move up the development, learning, how to do a database update if there's a new system preference or a change to a system preference, or you're adding a column, or so that's probably getting into the more intermediate stuff you need to learn, isn't it? Or is that the basic stuff? I don't know.
I feel like DB updates, it can be kind of in between, because if you're like fixing a typo on a system preference or changing it to be more verbose, I think you have to do a DB update to update it.
I think only if you change the values, but if all the options for a system preference. But if you're just changing the text, it's just changing a file.
Maybe. I have to look at the bug that Jesse and I worked on, because hers got failed QA, but it was just fixing the text. But it got failed QA for
right.
that. But maybe that was an incorrect fail QA, not an incorrect lack of a database update. I have to go find that bug and look at it. She was going to come to this, but it is stuck in another meeting. So
I guess that would be another thing, running the QA script, and what
oh
does it
yeah,
all mean?
not just running the QA script, but like, what does it do?
And then we've got I was just thinking, I've never written any, so I'm not the best person. Sometimes it says QA will say, well, this needs a test.
Yep. I was just adding tests to the notes because, yeah, unit
So
tests.
I think that's like intermediate, isn't it? Sort of,
Yeah.
you know.
Um,
And then we've got two different types now. So we've got the
unit tests and the Cypress tests. The unit tests are for the Perl files, and the Cypress tests are for template files, I think. Lucas can maybe expand on that because I'm less sure.
Yeah, essentially Cypress tests are for testing the UI.
And then does the view stuff go in the Cypress testing, or does it have, okay.
Yes.
because I guess that's a different topic, because you've got to maybe learn some basic Perl. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know any Perl. So but then there's Vue now for some of the newer modules, and then there's all the libraries we use, I guess, like Bootstrap. So there's, if you're doing UI stuff, then there's the classes and the page structure and what to use. Apart from, of course, you just look at one that you want it to look like and just copy that. I'm sure no one ever does that.
Maybe under where you put template files versus Perl files, like
Mhm.
a section about basically how things are posted to the Perl file. Like, how does the Perl file get data from the front end, and then how does the Perl file send data back to the template? Like, there's a loop there that I think, like a beginning developer, maybe like just understanding that flow is really important, I think.
Yeah, how you get things out of the database, how you get things into the database. Yeah. And where those sit in the files, I guess, as well. And then there's the whole release process, which I guess people get familiar with over time. Yeah. But I guess that's a development workflow, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then there's the coding guidelines, which people should be aware of as well. But I guess
Yeah, I
that's under
put
QA a little bit, maybe, but maybe it's
put
sort
that
of
kind of under
related.
the like code orientation
Hmm.
stuff. Some coding guidelines with like examples. which, I mean, a lot of that is in the guidelines, some of that at least. But I think having kind of a like, this is what we do, and possibly a little bit of like, this is why we do it this way in some cases, like for consistency. Because sometimes I see that come up where people will be like, oh, that's the coding guideline, but like, why are we doing it that way? It's like, well, because we made a
We've
decision
always
about it 6 years ago, and nobody's asked why we're doing it that way anymore, even though there's new things or whatever. Or someone has asked, but no one had enough of a drive to change it, you know. And that's something that comes up too at the twice a month, most months, community dev meetings. We do talk about like changes to the coding guidelines, like if we have something to add or change or uh update. That does get talked about there, but yeah, having kind of a little. And again, like a lot of the coding guideline has examples on the wiki, but we've heard from multiple people about how the wiki can be hard to find things on. Um, Especially since you can't Google search it right now because of the bot blocking. So, uh,
yeah, yeah, and I think the other bit would be translation workflow,
oh yes.
maybe, because you have to for strings, so that if you add new things thing to the pages, then you want them to be translated. So, well, people who don't speak English probably want them to be translated. Well, people that speak proper English, like British English, New Zealand English, rather than US English.
Yes, because US English is the official language, even though we have things like some of the spelling is
Reserves,
definitely
reserves, reserves versus holds,
also
flavor
like
versus flavor.
surname is technically part of US language, but it's not commonly used. Usually it's last name. Uh, so
That's
just things like
it's
that.
like a lot of the things, yeah, a lot of the things like in the database they may have the British spelling, but like in the front end it's been updated to be the American spelling.
Yeah, like we do a lot of that with jQuery, which just is like less stable than we'd like to do. So I know we talked about it at Hackfest last year or earlier this year, and Martin was like, you should just put in a bug to change it because we already use a translation. So we could just translate it back if we wanted to. So there is a bug for that, but I haven't done it and also worry that it would be confusing with reports because reports would still be surname because we probably wouldn't want to change the database.
Yeah, the other thing that as you were talking there, I just was thinking of. Now it's gone totally from my mind. What were we talking about then? Reports.
It's translation.
Yeah. It was how to get. There's a lot of bugs in there, and so choosing which ones to work on. So I don't know whether that. Sometimes I guess you want to do development because you want to fix something that's not working, but you want to get started on I'm saying you because yeah, everyone else, but apart from you want to choose something to work on that's not too complicated, I guess. Yeah, well, how to choose things to work on. Yeah. Maybe, I don't know. Or do people just want to focus on, I've got this major thing I want to do, or I just want to learn something basic for a start? How did those, like Brendan, how
Yeah.
did you choose things to work on when you started?
Um, the at first I was just, I would just be looking at bugs like and see if I could find like where it just like trying to explore the code and see like, oh, if I know kind of the area where this bug is happening, then that's where I started to just look at the code, I think. So it was just kind of random. Whatever bugs I thought I might be able to find where the code would be. That's what I chose to look at first. But I think like as part of that, maybe like a section on like tips and tricks on how to find the code that you might like how to use git grep and how to use like inspect element in the browser to try to find out like you can inspect element and then it's not always straightforward, but sometimes if you know like what you can search for in the code, then you can kind of go from the user interface to a place in the code. Just kind of tips on how like different techniques. There's different ways of figuring that out. Um, and um, also maybe like a section on like gotchas, like that weird things to look out for, to be aware. Like maybe I don't have a really good example off the top of my head, but maybe some of that like terminology thing that's just it's one way in the database, like how maybe you think of checkouts, but in Koha it's issues. A lot of times it says issue. So like things like that has like a historical reason why, and it's maybe not going to get changed anytime soon because it would everybody would have to go and update all their reports and things like that. But sort of tips and also warnings about what to look out for section. And then I really like Jason's idea about like very hands-on, like a task, even if it's like a silly made up thing, but it's like a tutorial that you can follow of I think of Andrew did the presentation one time about the party mode thing. And it was just like a really silly thing, but it makes it fun to learn. Like so maybe like and the party mode thing was implemented with a patron attribute, but maybe like, implement party mode table and then show like how you can go from creating a table to changing the user interface, even if it's not like a real Koha feature, but it'll be like an easy thing to follow and you'll see the results. I think that's a lot of times going to be like the game changer. You do something and you see the results is like really nice.
And it would be super helpful to have like multiple tutorials covering different topics like that. Like the basic stuff, but also what if I want to add a database column? Like give me a tutorial on walking through that sort of thing so that I can refer back to it because I don't know
I,
what I'm doing, you know?
I I think it would be interesting, like kind of like what you were saying there. If you were ever to have like a video tutorial of something like, okay, somebody has reported this problem, or we're going to fix this one thing, and then go through and just be like, okay, this is what I'm doing, this is why I'm doing it. And part of the problem I find when you're reading documentation that has been written by people who are very knowledgeable, is they're doing so many steps in their head because they know and you don't know. So they might make a leap that they don't recognize they're making in the documentation. So I was following something recently in the Koha advent calendar from a couple years ago, and they're talking about how to like create a plugin and like, okay, this is all very cool, but I can tell that there's assumptions being made about what somebody knows that and these cracks that you can kind of fall into if you don't know about them. Um, so I don't know that that's a very time consuming proposition if you're doing anything with video. But maybe sometime when people could be invited to watch when I don't know.
Yeah, well, and I remember we've done some of that before. When I was at a library, I remember there was a bug squashing day where Nick and Kyle did like, we're gonna find some bugs and go through and do them live and try and explain what we're doing as we go. Um, Although there were definitely some of those, either the gaps or and also some of the we're explaining what we're doing, but not why we're doing it. Like we're saying, this is what we did, but not like, and here's why it's helpful. Um, and John, I have also, maybe that would be a good thing to work on at a meeting sometime, is going through and like doing a pull request to update that advent calendar, because like it doesn't have the CSRF information from a couple years ago, so you can't actually save configuration in that example plugin because the Koha CSRF token doesn't exist in it and things like that. Because it is like a lot of the work has already been done there to make a pretty good like step-by-step tutorial. It's just missing some stuff / needs to be updated. And that might be a good place to start a tutorial, is with something that already exists that needs updating and some gaps filled in.
Yeah, like about that, probably maybe like a whole section about the database. Like I think maybe like an experienced developer probably looks at the schema to understand what's available to use in with those DBIX um, function calls. But like it's not very obvious just if you're looking at the code and you haven't looked at, if you did not look at the database schema, it's not obvious like what functions are available, maybe. So that, I guess that would go into like the code orientation piece, I guess.
Yeah. I added that kind of under the database structure and historical information too, because like the DBIX is kind of how the structure gets used. And also, like, this can totally and should be a running list somewhere, probably somewhere for community, not just in our uh baby devs meeting notes. But
Yeah,
since we were kind of the ones who had a push for it.
I'm happy to create something from all our notes once we've
Thank you.
before the next meeting. Well, in the next week anyway.
Yep.
Also,
well, and our next dev meeting isn't until January because of the holidays. So
yeah, I'll try and do it as soon as I can so that people can add to it.
thank you. And yeah, I'm planning on maybe not every single dev meeting bringing this up, but kind of keeping it on people's minds. So especially if someone's creating documentation, like if we're making documentation at Bywater for a developer, or that could be helpful, like making sure that we keep in mind some of this stuff, like not having steps in our head that we make assumptions about if someone's new to developing on Koha. And that kind of thing. So
and maybe it would be good to get some ideas from Martin's obviously making dinner now, but you know, he's brought on board a whole range, a lot of new developers, and I'm sure Bywater does that as well. So obviously, I assume you hire people who have computer science degree or some programming knowledge, but you know, they must all have the same sort of questions when they're getting started as a new developer for your organization. And so what are the common things you have to tell people over and over again, if you can remember? Because yeah, when you're new, it's the first time. It's good because you don't know anything. So yeah, what's the phrase? There's no stupid questions. There's just things you don't know the answer to. So
yeah. And yeah, definitely talking to all the places who hire and train developers about if they have documentation they can share.
And I guess the challenge is as well, you support other people, different organizations support different products, so they all do things differently.
Yeah. Also, just like
Well, you've got you've
for
got Aspen.
example,
Just Aspen is totally different from Koha, I
yeah.
guess, as well. Yeah.
And also, for example, like Kyle and Nick learned how to code on Koha a long time ago and only use Vim, not Visual Code Editor or anything. And so, like, that's different too. Mostly now, a lot of the documentation, like even for Koha testing Docker, has like, here's how to set up some VS Code stuff. And Brendan has even more about that. And um, that's most of what I use because I find it a lot faster usually than Vim. Unless I'm just doing like small, like string change type things. But like I did all of the local holds priority groups thing. That was pretty much all in VS Code because that was a lot easier to do like copy and paste in and easy
The
version
merge editor
stuff. The
is
merge
the merge
editor,
editor is so much nice.
yeah. So just like things like that.
I guess that's a Git thing, but doing a rebase is scary. Well, it is for me anyway.
Yeah.
Because it's
Also,
very
just in
pretty
general, a
arcane.
lot of the things we have on the wiki, like commit messages, test plans, writing release notes, which by the way, at KohaCon Work Hackfest days, um, some members of the documentation team wrote up some like example release notes that are on the wiki now so that you can have like a good starting place like this enhancement, blah de blah. We'd like to get some. You can use Markdown on release notes. That's not documented yet. Like, kind of when we use the different Markdown isn't really documented anywhere. So, that's kind of like a next thing. But there is something now so that when you're adding release notes, it's like there's a place to look that gives a good starting point.
Yeah, and we're going to create a little checklist, something you can attach to the bug or something like that. So just say, is this a UI interface change? Is it function change? Or, just a little checklist so that you can tick off and put some notes in so that it makes it easier to document it or figure out what's changed. Because, sometimes when a bug gets 10, 15 commit messages, it's a bit hard to figure out what it does.
Yep.
One thing that I got reminded of when Juliet showed up, a barrier for librarians into this is sometimes an IT department that doesn't trust the fact that it's safe to download and install Koha testing Docker. So I wonder if there's something that the community could put out, some sort of like simplification of what's going on there so that a librarian could give it to their IT department and say, hey, this is what this does. There's nothing bad is going to happen. Something like that might help get past that barrier.
Yeah, I
And that might be
assume.
something that like Evelyn could help us with. She's our security person on our systems team, and I know she has stuff like that to give to IT departments about like other Koha things. So might have a good starting point for something like that to help with IT.
Yeah, because I assume a lot of libraries will use being Windows desktops, so it'll be, why should you let this person have
Access to
Linux?
WSL and
Yeah, and
or
all these other
WL.
things, and let them install things, and a lot of places lock down, commercial organizations anyway, lock down desktops. So yeah.
Or even web pages you can go to. I mean,
Right, yeah.
I've had to have quite a number of open source things unlocked because they were blocked by the firewall by default.
So all we need to do is create a series of tutorials taking you from beginner to expert in 10 simple steps.
It's like a 4-year degree at this point, but
We've certainly got enough to
Also,
get
like,
started
here's
on.
some of this is like the kinds of things we're already doing when we do a bug. And so maybe what we could do is try and, we've talked about that sometimes we talk here about the what, not the why. So maybe we should try and pick like a real basic bug and try and go through all the whys too. Because then we'll have a recording of it and a step by step, and that could be a good like starting place, even if that's not what we end up, even if we make our tutorial, here's how to do party mode or whatever. Um, it'll help us get like a lot of those in between steps that we might not think about that a new person would need. Um, so we can be more mindful about that when we're going through and testing bugs in the future. So at least our videos are a more helpful base for some of this, because this is already what we're working on here.
Yeah, and
I
even
think
if you do it that way, you can take what's there and turn it into a nice step-by-step tutorial afterwards. So that, yeah. Sorry, I interrupted again.
It's okay. Like on that note, I think it could be really helpful. Like there's certain things that maybe they've been implemented, like for library groups as an example. So library groups have been implemented for one thing, but it would be really helpful to take one of the bugs that has already been developed and just go through it. Like this is all the things that needed to be done to make library groups work for this other thing so that somebody could take that as an example, like, oh, I want to make library groups work for this other thing, and I have sort of like a rough guide based on a different feature, but
Oh,
some
and
kind of like
hey,
a
we have someone here who did the writing on how to make library groups work for holds, local holds priority. So maybe
oh.
that's me. Maybe I could do that. And
Did you write
Jason
that
helped test.
down?
What?
Did you write is it just on the bug or did you like you have a
Oh no, I mean
document
I did
somewhere?
it, but maybe we can go through together, like you were just saying.
Yeah,
That's a
yeah,
library group thing that I wrote the code on.
yeah.
So could definitely go through, and Jason did like all of the testing for it. We did so much testing. Um, and we could talk about some of that because that also talks about like how the very messed up holds code works. Because the base of the holds code is like 20 years old or more and has been kind of, as Nick once told me, Frankenstein together over the last 20 years. And sometimes it's hard to know how it works because there's a lot. Um, and so just going through, like, I added a system preference and changed another system preference and updated the holds queue. And I think also updated the real-time holds queue. So like there's a lot going on there. That could be a good one to go through sometime and do that. Here's what we did. Because that's a great idea. That's often what I do when I'm developing is I'll go look and say, okay, when's the last time somebody touched this code? What all did they do? Or when's the last time someone added a permission? And go look at the code and see, oh, that's how they added the permission. Here's where they added the checks. Things like that.
Yeah, that's like that would be a good thing for the code orientation part, I guess, or like how to use git blame to look up like so then you can find the bug on Bugzilla and you can read the conversation of around where the code was when the code was being written.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing is how to ask for help, or because it's a bit if you're new and you look at the development channel and chat, and people are talking about all these weird arcane things that whoosh. It's like can be a little bit intimidating, but once you get to know the people, they're all pretty good. But how to ask for help
And the
you
only
know, and
time I've ever had anyone get upset at me for failing QA was in Portland at KohaCon. And it's because I failed QA on like 10 of someone's bug in a row. And then they were like, no, you're doing it wrong. And I said, no, the test plan is wrong. Because I was like skipping some step that wasn't documented. And that's why I was failing. Um, and they were really more just like confused about why it kept failing until we talked about it. They weren't even really upset. And so it's like, no, no one's going to be mad if you're asking questions or trying to clarify something or failing QA because it doesn't work, because that's how we know it doesn't work or it needs more information. And
and
we all want there to be more people able to contribute and test and things. Um,
yeah,
so that,
sometimes people do get grumpy, but that's just life, I think, because they've
yeah,
got a lot going on, and so. But
usually,
most people are pretty good. So
yeah, usually they're not grumpy because you're asking or you're failing QA. They're grumpy because of something else or because they don't come across great online, in some cases.
yeah, and we do have lots of people who do the QA and development. English isn't their first language,
Yeah.
so yeah, which is a good thing. So.
Yeah. Okay. So that was like our whole meeting. It was very different than normal, but I think that's good. Our next meeting is January 8th. Same time, same place. I'll probably have a new. Do you think we should keep going on the same Google Doc or make a new one for like 2026? Do you know, Jason, how the other SIGs do it?
I think George is the only one that's like consistently running an agenda, and I think he is starting a new file
Okay.
for next year.
So I'll start a new file and put it in the same folder with the same permissions and everything.
I'd
And I
suggest
think,
just linking to the previous
yeah, and I'll
one
link to
because
this. And probably
there's a
I'll
lot
put a
of
link in here to the new one, so if someone's got it bookmarked, um
yeah, because there's a lot of good stuff in there. So
yeah.
when you look at it,
And I think probably for the new one we'll add, right now we pretty much have previous driver discussion topics is like our kind of default what's on all the agendas. But I think I don't think we're gonna want to spend all the meeting talking about just documentation again. But I think probably having a few minutes to talk about what's new with documentation, what we're working on, or to work on something together, like maybe for the first 15 minutes of the meeting or something each time. And then also notes about things for like what bugs might be good to go through and do, like Brendan was suggesting with. Because I think that would be really helpful as well. So I'll add those to the like kind of default to the new one. Anyone have anything else they want to talk about before I make funny motions to to cut the recording?
I have one last thought about what would be a good feature in the documentation is like a way of doing the diagrams. So you can do you could diagram like how the Holt's algorithm works or something like that in a simple way that's easy to reproduce. With like I used a thing called Mermaid JS to do the diagrams on my little blog. And it's really nice. It's like you write basically like Markdown and it generates the diagram for you automatically. So it'd
Yeah.
be something to consider for the developer documentation, a way of having easily created diagrams that are going to be consistent.
Yeah, I did have this idea ages ago of doing workflow diagrams, process maps for some of the functions in Goa, because there's lots of things, but doing mermaid diagrams seems a nice, easy way.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's always what I run into if I try doing it manually is I get too into the like, okay, well now I'm trying to place all the things as I go and because I've tried diagramming the holds queue and like how that works because it's a mess and we get questions about it a lot. And every time I end up being like, oh, this is like weirdly circular here. And so doing it like in Markdown and then having Mermaid make it look nice for me, I think would help with that.
Yeah, and then if something like changes, you just add to the code and it regenerates the image for you, like so you don't have to like
Do the whole
if
thing or yeah.
you're screwed, you have to start all over basically.
Yeah. I like that. Okay. Well, thanks everybody.
And I thought, I don't want to keep it on any longer, but should we think about doing a survey for people and say, what did you wish you knew when you started Go development? If people can remember. But anyway,
Yeah.
Well,
maybe that's something we can.
That could go to the librarians too, like right now. I mean, like, what's stopping you from, um, I, I think that would be valuable.
Then we can say we've got data-backed decision making, or whatever the phrase is.
Data-driven decision making. We love that buzzword.
Yep. Okay. Well, thank you everybody, and we'll see you next month. Okay, end the recording. I mean, I have to actually take permission so that I don't do the thing. Okay.